Is the brand new Team Corelli Kagama limited edition the new king of bashers? Today, we're gonna find out. This car is heavily upgraded from the stock Kagama, starting with a beautiful new paint scheme on the body, followed by a ton of limited edition upgrades under the hood. Starting off, we've got some fancy new gold 17mm wheel hex nuts. I believe these are the same as the standard wheel hex nuts, just in gold, though they might be slightly different as these serrations don't look the same as I remember from the stock Kagama. Underneath that, we've got the same wheels and tires off the original Kagama. These tires are really good, as are these wheels. The sidewalls are a little bit soft, but overall these are a fantastic set of bashing tires. The only thing I'd like to see is for them to seal up the holes in the wheels and vent the tires instead. There's a bit of controversy over this, but I have found that having the tires vented and the wheels sealed is the best way to have a basher tire. This allows for proper venting of the tire, but prevents any debris from getting caught and staying inside due to centrifugal force blowing everything back out those holes. Now, even though this is a limited edition car, we aren't just going to be taking it apart and looking at it. We're going to be bashing this car, and we're going to be bashing it hard to see just how durable it is, because I'm very curious to see how it holds up against what I think is the current king of bashers, the V6 Arma Kraton EXB. If you appreciate me thrashing my limited edition cars so you don't have to thrash yours, subscribing is the best way to show me that. Underneath the tires, the hubs in the front and rear do look the same as on the regular Kagama, but connecting those to the chassis are some brand new, super heavy-duty looking upper links. Not only do these links have really nice spring steel adjustable centers, but these ends are absolutely massive and far larger than we've seen on previous Team Corelli cars. I'd be really surprised to see one of these break when we're bashing, but we'll just have to find out because this is a brand new part. Underneath that, we have the same dog bones we've previously seen. I've never really had too much trouble with these dog bones, and I don't expect to have trouble on this, though their front end counterparts have been a little bit problematic, and we do have a fix for that. The outer stub shafts are the same spring steel stub shafts we saw on the regular Kagama, nothing new here, though again, these are very good quality. And speaking of good quality, we've got some brand new parts hanging off the back of this car. New to the Kagama is this super flexible wing. Previously on these cars, these wings were a fairly serious weak point, and attaching that wing to the car is a new wing mount that hopefully is also going to be a lot more sturdy. Following along the bottom, we've got the same rear bumper as on the regular Kagama, though the screw washers are gold, and speaking of gold, check out this chassis. This is their 7075 chassis. This is obviously the limited edition version, and as you can see, mine's number 28 of 999. I know this is a limited edition run, but I'm very curious to see if Team Corelli brings out a cheaper non-limited edition XTR style version with all of the same upgraded parts, assuming this car is popular enough. I believe this little wing mount plate is also new. That's a nice little piece of reinforcement for the wing, again with more gold accent on it. And then pulling the wing off, you can see just how flexible this thing is. That's a huge improvement from their old wings, and this is probably not going to break. One thing that is carried over from the original Kagama that I'm not a huge fan of is even though most of the wing mount screws are on the outside, two of them are hidden here on the inside. And unfortunately, these two guys, you can barely see them, are not easy to get to. You can sneak them out of there with a ball tip hex bit, but I'd prefer not to have to do that. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I don't end up putting them back in. With those out though, you can see the updated wing mount. This thing looks very stout. Again, we'll have to see how stout it is when we bash it. And with that out of the way, we get our first look at the beautiful gold 7075 shock towers. At about 6mm thick, these are some real chunky boys. Of course, in order to maintain compatibility with everything, they're not 6mm everywhere, but this definitely is going to improve their strength, and these are beautiful. The shocks that are connected to them are also upgraded. For the most part, they're the same, though we do get some new fancy bits. These upper protectors are the same as we've seen before, but these upper shock mounts are brand new. As you can see, they mount with some pretty thick screws, though the screws don't go all the way through. They do have some reinforcement with this hex that locks into the tower. And overall, this seems like a pretty strong design. How it seems and how it works, though, can be two different things. Don't worry, we'll be taking a close look at that fancy new motor really soon. Overall, these shocks are very similar to what we've seen before. We've got locking lower spring perches and nice threaded bodies, though I have had some problems with these caps in the past. This loop's a little bit thin, and I have broken them. Again, we'll see how it goes on this one. The big change, though, is underneath here. We now have aluminum lower caps, and we've got this cool rubber bumper to protect them and act as a soft travel limiter. These are bladder style shocks. I suspect at some point we'll see Team Corelli go to emulsion style shocks like everybody else has. But for now, these do work just fine, and the fluid in them feels reasonably thick, though not crazy thick like the 4S cars have been coming. Now to take a closer look at what other fancy parts we get back here, I think it's going to be easiest just to go ahead and finish taking this whole rear module off. And with as far as we've already gotten, that's just a few screws here on this center brace. which lets us take this cover off. I believe this center brace is the same as on the regular Kagama, just in gold. And we just got a few more screws down here, and just a few more screws here on the bottom. Unlike most RCs that only use 4 screws, these Team Corrali cars actually use 10 to hold these modules on, which definitely does improve their strength. Of course, the downside to that is more screws you have to remove when you want to take it apart, but that is always going to be a trade-off between strength and convenience. The nice thing is, the stronger it is, the less often you have to take it apart. Underneath that rear differential housing, we do see a gasket. I don't remember seeing those on the regular Kagama, so I think this is new as well. These center drive shafts are the same as we've seen previously, though they are very stout. With this off, we can get a closer look at that rear shock tower, and it really does look nice. These Team Corrali upgrade parts are very fancy, and I've been pretty impressed with them so far. Connected to that, you can see another upgrade part, and that's this 7075 bulkhead. This is definitely an upgrade from the plastic one and an upgrade from the competition that just uses 6061. Being a handling-oriented car, this thing does have sway bars in the front and rear, as does the regular Kagama. And now with that out of the way, we can get a look at these suspension blocks. These are really nice machined aluminum. And while they do appear to be the same as on the regular Kagama, I do like that they use these little pill inserts. These add a little extra cushion to the suspension pins in an impact, and I found they actually hold up better than having just regular aluminum with holes in them. And with that removed, we're left with the 7075 differential bulkhead. Keep in mind, you don't have to do all this to get the differential out of here. You really just need to take the D block off, remove a couple screws from the bottom, and then the screws for the cover, and it'll come right out. This differential is exactly the same as we saw on the regular Kagama. It does have nice spring steel outdrives, though I'm kind of surprised not to see Team Corrali's aluminum differential housing on here. They do have them, and since this is the fancy limited edition, I'm surprised they're not on here. There's a pretty appropriate amount of grease on here, and I have to say, this grease actually smells nice, and I think this is the first time I've ever seen nice smelling grease on an RC car, or maybe anywhere. Pulling the differential apart, we do have machined spiral bevel ring and pinion gears. The spiral bevel isn't super pronounced on here, but this does make for a stronger gear. Not only does the constant mesh put less load on the gear teeth, but the design of them actually lets you get more gear tooth surface for a given area, and that's what makes them stronger. Inside here, you can see we have the exact same sintered steel gears we've seen previously. Overall, these are definitely good differentials, and I've had very few problems with them. Now I'm going to quickly put all this together because I want to take a look at those sweet new electronics. First thing I really appreciate is this mount right here. This is actually designed to take one of these SkyRC GNSS performance analyzers. If you've never seen one of these before, these are wireless Bluetooth modules, and they allow you to check top speed, acceleration, and a bunch of other performance data. And this mount makes it super easy to do that. Underneath that mount is kind of an interesting choice. We've got this really cool dual fan mount made out of carbon fiber, but no fans on it. This does look like it's designed to take two 30mm fans, and fans are pretty inexpensive. Though with this, I would have liked to have seen a fan. Maybe with this big motor, it's not necessary. To get a closer look at the motor, we need to take this body reinforcement tower off, and this is one thing I really don't like about these TC cars. The tower is held on by this pin that has this little O-ring retaining it, and whereas this system does actually work just fine, I've never had a problem with it in practice. These little O-rings can be pretty fiddly and easy to lose. It actually would be nice to see a couple of extra ones included with their cars. It would only cost them a couple of cents and would be a nice add-on. With that removed, we can just hinge that up out of the way, and you can see the tower-to-tower mounts are attached to this center differential module, which makes things very, very strong. Underneath this cover, we do have a good quality steel pinion gear and a steel spur gear. And now removing these wires from the ESC, we can take these two beefy motor mount retaining screws out, and then the motor just slides right out. Very easy. You can see we have kind of a dual level motor mount here, and I've never had a single problem with this Team Corrali motor mount. It's really good. I'm definitely curious to see the inside of this motor though, so let's go ahead and get this mount off of here and take a closer look at this beauty of a motor. With that off, we get a good close look at what Team Corrali is calling the Grizzly Monster Power 945. This is a brand new design for them, and a brand new design in general, I think. One really interesting thing is in the pictures, it seems very long, but it actually has this cap on the back, which is basically just a heat sink. And not including that cap, this motor is about 70mm long and about 43mm in diameter, which is pretty standard for a 1/8 scale truck. On the back, it says they have high temperature magnets, low internal resistance, and that it's high torque. This is a 2100 kV motor, which I think is slightly higher than the stock kV. But now, let's take a look and see if there's anything special inside. I do really appreciate these large motor bell screws. A lot of motors just use teeny tiny screws around the outside edge, and combined with a lot of thread lock, they can be very difficult to remove without stripping them out. And pulling this end belt off, this bearing is actually branded NMB, which is pretty rare for these RTR motors. That means this is going to be a high quality bearing, and that's really nice to see. I'm going to pull the rotor out to get a closer look at it. I don't necessarily recommend you do this unless you absolutely have to. These magnets are very, very strong, and you can damage things if you're not careful. The rotor itself is Kevlar wrapped, and it does feel pretty heavy. This thing measures 50 millimeters long by 21 millimeters in diameter. And as you can see, it's balanced on both ends. This is a balancing putty. This is applied at the factory to make sure it runs nice and smooth. Overall, this looks like a pretty high quality piece of kit. Underneath that, you can see we have a little bit of a protective shield here, and some nice looking thick windings. And it's hard to show on camera, but there's another NMB branded bearing down there at the bottom. So overall, whereas this motor appears to be about the same size as a standard 1/8 scale bashing motor, it definitely feels like it's at least one step up in quality from a standard RTR. That being said, I'm really curious to see how it performs, which we'll find out in just a minute. Powering that motor is the Torox 185. This is a beefed up version of the G1 Max 8 from Hobbywing. The motor manual does call this the 185 LE, but I think that's just because it's black, not red. One nice thing about this ESC is it's just a standard Hobbywing ESC, and they haven't crippled any of the functionality. So you can use a standard Hobbywing programmer on it and change all the normal settings. This ESC, however, does claim to be 185 amp, which puts it between the original G1 Max 8 and the G2 Max 8, and these are pretty stout. To power the ESC, you get two genuine AMAS XT90 connectors and a little jumper in case you just want to run one battery, and this does have a cap pack on it as well. These cap packs don't actually make the ESC produce any more power, but they can smooth out power delivery in really high load situations, which can help protect the ESC from damage and prevent it from running weird under really heavy load. This battery tray is pretty decent. It's their updated V2 battery tray, which is a little bit less likely to break, though I do tend to break them occasionally. These battery straps appear to be the same as previous, which again, I'm not super thrilled about. I've broken these quite a few times as well. We'll see if we break them in this car. One really big upgrade from the stock Kagama is this OC32 servo. Let's take a closer look at that. To get that servo out, we need to disconnect it from the receiver. This receiver box is not waterproof, and as far as I could see in the manual, this car also isn't being claimed as waterproof. With that being said, I've watched these Team Corrali cars a bunch of times, and I've never actually had a problem with it. If you dump it in a lake, it probably wouldn't survive, but incidental moisture almost certainly isn't going to be a problem. Now, this receiver looks a little bit different from what we're used to, because this car is using this absolute banger of a transmitter. This thing's really cool for an RTR. As you can see, it's got a nice screen on it. It does have multiple models, all the adjustments you would expect, a nice foam drop steering wheel, and overall feels really good. The design of this does look a little bit dated, and that's because this is actually the Absema CR3P, and it came out in 2012, which was quite a while ago, though this is a decent transmitter, and I think it's a nice step up from what you normally get with the Kagama. All right, now let's take a look under the hood of this new servo. This servo is claiming to be IP67 waterproof, which is really nice to see. And I'm not sure how far we're going to be going here because we've got sealant over these screws preventing us from getting inside, though we might be able to just pick that out of the way. Yeah, I think we can work around it. Okay, yeah, given that there are no O-rings on these screws, I'm guessing that silicone is for waterproofing, so if you take it apart, you're going to need to reapply that in order for it to maintain that same IP67 rating, which of course they probably won't warranty if you do take it apart, but that's what we're going to do anyway. We can see we've got a little plastic bottom cap here with an O-ring around it, and then in here we have a standard brushed motor. This does say OC core on it. I think that probably means this motor is coreless. Very briefly, coreless brushed motors have less mass in the rotating part, and that lower mass means the motor can change directions more quickly. And that's an interesting point because servo strength and speed are the stats you normally get, but they aren't the only important things for a servo. How fast that motor can change directions makes a huge difference on how responsive the servo feels. And of course, how strong the gears themselves are determine how long this thing's gonna last. And this has all steel gears, and these look really high quality. We've got a ball bearing up here and a little bushing for the second shaft, as well as what appears to be an actual lip seal here in the top instead of just an O-ring. I've only ever seen this on Savox servos before, and it really helps with waterproofing in that area. Rounding out the changes with the limited edition, we do have an aluminum servo saver arm, as well as aluminum upper hinge pin mounts, that same 7075 6mm shock tower, and a few other bits and pieces, but there is a problem up here. And that is with these front CVDs. Occasionally people have been having problems where the CVDs actually spit out the pins in here. It's actually a lot less of a problem on these spring type pin retainers, and more of a problem on the forest cars that use a more flat metal strip. Basically, if things get aligned properly, centrifugal force can just push the pin right out through the spring, and you'll have this fall apart while looking like nothing happened. Fortunately, Team Corelli listens to their customers, and they've already fixed the problem. As you can see, they now have these aluminum caps that go over everything, which means those pins are not coming out. They've also included this retrofit kit that you can use with your current axles. In this notification, it says something really interesting. As the first batch of Kagama limited editions was already built, blah, blah, blah. First batch kind of makes me think there might be a second batch. So if you missed out on buying one of these the first time, sounds like there might be a second chance. Now we're just going to go ahead and use the ones that came pre-assembled, and we'll keep these as spares. I'm going to get those installed, get all this put back together, and let's go see how this new limited edition Kagama performs. Team Corelli are famous for under-gearing their cars out of the box, so I'm not expecting this to be a rocket ship with the stock gearing, but let's see what we can do. That's pretty quick, and it handles really well. I think we were starting to get wheelie limited already there. Let's see. No, we're not getting anywhere near full throttle. We're wheeling really, really easy. Let's see how close we can get to that full throttle, though. That's about all we're going to get out of it. Let's see what we did. 44 miles an hour, that's pretty good. With some more aggressive gearing, I think we could do better because there'd be less torque and more top speed, but 44 is not bad out of the box. Now, speaking of torque, this thing feels like it's got a boatload of it. And yeah, it definitely has some jam. It won't do a standing backflip because I think the center differential fluid's a little bit too thin, but this thing feels plenty powerful enough and really does handle very, very well. Team Corelli is known for their handling, so I'm not surprised about that, but I really like how these tires bite in the dirt. This also feels pretty good in grass and general debris. Obviously, it's going to be pretty mixed results depending on what kind of terrain you're on, but I've always had really good luck with these tires, and I'm having good luck with them here as well. Even on solid grass, it feels really nice. Oop, lost track of it for a second there. Let's see if we can get a little jump up out of this retention pond. Here we go. Nice little backflip jump, felt pretty good. It's pretty dusty out here. Let's do that again, that was good. Yeah, it's tuned up really nicely out of the box. And backflips are no problem whatsoever. Definitely feels awesome. Let's get one more of those. See if we can get a little bit more speed up. Yeah, she flies really, really nicely. This is one of the best handling cars you can buy, and I've always been happy with how they're set up right out of the box. Team Corelli's really, really good for that. As you can see, this thing really doesn't even want to flip over when you're pushing it hard. Let's see how it does on a pile of dirt. This should be pretty easy for durability. But yeah, controllability is awesome with this car. These tires have plenty of bite. We've got good ground clearance. And I would say compared to the competition, this thing holds up really, really well. It's super fun, handles awesomely, is very easy to control, and out of the box definitely has a lot of power. That being said, the original Kagama also handles really well and jumps well, but the real question is, how much more durable is this thing than the original Kagama? Well, to find that out, we're going to take it off the big ramp. It lands really nice and flat. Control is amazing. Whoa! Well guys, so far I'm not very impressed with this new servo. It broke on that landing, which wasn't that hard of a landing. So let's swap it out with something a bit spicier. And let's go give this durability test another try. Alright guys, take two. I'm not thrilled about having to replace that servo, but it happens. Nice little nose crash there. Obviously we can do better than that though. See if we can get off a little jump off the small ramp. Not quite a backflip. In the long run, I'm definitely going to want to go ahead and put a bigger pinion on this thing. Let's see if we can get a bigger jump out of it, though. There we go. Double backflip onto the wing. And the wing survived. That's really impressive. Let's see if we can get even more air out of it. Oh! That was a pretty harsh landing. Maybe a front flip?
Nice. So far, man, this thing is absolutely awesome. I'm loving it. Again, not thrilled about the servo, but durability seems pretty good. And yes, it does hurt me every single time I crash on purpose, but gotta test this thing out for you guys. Oh, right onto the arm. She's still going. Now, obviously, these hits aren't skate park level hits, but they're still pretty hard. See if we can get a nice smooth run up. Nice. All right, couple more intentional crashes. Well, or intentional perfect landings. Let's try that again. Oh, right on the front arm. Steering's still good, and the arm is still intact. Let's do it again. Not too bad. Just catch that jump from a different perspective. Oh, go one more jump. That was a really nasty landing. Try it again. Gonna land on power. Oh man, that was rough. All right, one more jump.
Overall, guys, I'm pretty impressed with the limited edition Kagama. This thing handles really, really well, just like the regular Kagama does. And it has a ton of strength upgrades and a few performance upgrades, not all of which actually survived. That being said, everything else did survive. Now, obviously, this is not Kevin Talbot skate park level bashing, but I do think what I just did is a good representation of what you might do in your backyard with one of these. Now, is this better than the V6 Kraton EXB? I'm not sure. Price-wise, they're pretty similar. This actually comes out a bit cheaper than the Kraton EXB, especially since the Kraton EXB just went up in price. I think the EXB is a little bit more of a polished package, and the servo on the EXB, at least in my experience, is better. That being said, I think this handles a little bit better. The bulkheads are 70-75 instead of 60-61. Maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. And overall, I think this is a really serious competition for the best basher you can buy, assuming, of course, you can actually buy it. This is a limited edition run, and there's no indication from Team Corelli that they're planning on making more once these 999 are gone. So if you want to pick one up, I'd recommend doing it now. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd recommend one of these.